A very warm welcome to the Brahmakumari Center and for joining us this evening on self-care, improving the quality of everyday life. I hope you are all staying safe, doing well, and of course enjoying the weather a bit as now it's nice in Calgary. I do ask of two things today in the session. First of all, please participate and actively participate because it's only for your benefit. And when you actively participate, it gets you thinking instead of just listening, and it allows you to apply it to your practical life. Secondly, to interact, please use the live chat box. If you cannot access the live chat box and it's not letting you type, just log into your Gmail account, and from there you should be fine and be able to chat. So a little bit about myself. My name is Neha. I am 19 years old, and I am currently studying at university, and I am a youth at the Brahmakumaris. So today we are going to improve the quality of everyday life by integrating the virtue forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is a virtue that we often hear, and it can be us forgiving someone or it could be someone forgiving us. But we don't really realize the true power that this virtue holds when we have truly forgiven and used it to its maximum capacity. We often hear these three words, I forgive you, right? And sometimes this is the hardest words that you can give someone because often it is difficult to forgive someone. But it can be the greatest gift if you are willing to give it to someone, or even if you're willing to give it to yourself. We often say, I forgive you, but do we truly mean it from the bottom of our heart? Or are we just saying it, like I forgive you, but there is no meaning or expression involved with it? We need it from the bottom of our heart, from this core. And I'd like to give an example of a tree. From the bottom of the tree is its root, and it gets all its nutrients from there, its sustenance, all the water. Just like that, we need to go to our core, our roots. We have to go to our heart, our mind. We have to feed it with positivity and sustenance. And then only then can we forgive, when it's from the bottom of our heart. Just like when we give it from our roots of a tree, it blossoms into something beautiful. And just like that, if we can sustain our roots, our core, we can blossom into something beautiful when we have forgiven and truly forgiven. This is why starting from the core and working our way out and upward is so important, because we bloom like a flower. We give life. And we need to do this from the bottom of our heart, because or else we'll still hold grudges. We'll still keep thinking about it. And it'll make us lose our peace of mind. And nowadays, peace of mind is so important for us to be at ease. Think about it. So, let's start with a question. A very easy question, which I'd like you to ask yourself, and please use the chat box if you can. Why should I forgive a person who has hurt me? Now, this person can be someone who's a stranger, someone I've never met before, and they hurt me. Or this person can even be someone I hold so dearly to me, so close to me, someone I respect, but they hurt me. So why should I forgive? No matter if it's something so small, no matter if it's something so big, no matter if it's a close person, a far person, why should I forgive? I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it and use the chat box if you can. Okay, so I hope you got a chance to reflect on it. The first reason why we should forgive is because it sets us free. Our mind is like a bird in a cage. We want to go further, go expand, but we're just thinking about the same thing, the same situation which happened to us, and we can't go further and let ourselves be limitless and free because we're trapped inside our own conscious mind that just can't stop thinking about it. It's a waste of energy. Think about a bird trapped in a cage. It wants to escape. It'll use its beak, its wings. It'll be hitting itself against the iron rods. But in all realness, it's just hurting itself. And it's wasting its energy. So that's how our mind is. We just keep thinking about the situation. We're trapped at this one place, this one instant in time, and we cannot move on. So that's why it sets us free. And it can help us move forward with our life. Like if a bird is set free, it can go to whichever branch it wants, and the world is its limit. It can go wherever it wants. So we need to forgive those who hurt us because it sets us free. In addition to that, it also can set the person who hurt us, it can set them free because they're probably guilty too, a lot of people who have hurted someone. And it sets them free as well. So it's a win-win solution for both, this freedom. The second reason we should forgive someone who has hurt us is because it removes the malice from our heart and also this anger from our heart. Think about it. If we have so much hatred inside us, we can't give to the world. We're just consumed by our own anger and frustration that we have nothing to give. This hate will do us no good. Instead, we need love. We need to love ourselves. If our heart is filled with anger, we can't go anywhere. So our love is what can help us do good for others and ourselves. So now that we've talked about that, I'm going to ask another question. How do you feel after you have truly forgiven someone from the heart? I'll give you another couple seconds to think. Yes, easiness is a big virtue associated with forgiveness. Lightness. Yes, I agree with lightness a lot because first of all, the heaviness goes from your mind. What we were talking about, like this cage, this burden, we are set free and we feel light. But not only in that lightness sense, we can also feel like a candle, like giving lightness in a dark space. It can give us clarity and it can make us see, truly perceive from our eyes. It's kind of like a lighthouse example too. It's like usually when ships are they're lost at sea in the dark, they use the lighthouse to help find their way. And just like that, we can help others find their way, if we are light and we can forgive. We also feel peaceful. Our mind is at ease, not a million things going on our head, and not blaming, but actually understanding and having peace. And you understand and you have empathy towards the person who has hurt you. You can put yourself in their shoes, see the circumstances, the reasons why they did what they did. And you can understand it from their point of view. So it gives you compassion towards others and yourself because you're easy on yourself. On top of that, we often can't forgive because we expect. And if we don't expect from the first place, we will feel self-fulfilled. So we can only forgive when we're fulfilled and content within ourselves because we're not looking for outward apologies or outward anything in general. It also increases energy. We have so much energy throughout our day because it's not going to wasteful thoughts and wasteful actions. So our overall well-being improves. Or else we just feel depressed in bed sometimes and we can't get out and we're not productive without our day. So if we forgive, we also feel active and productive. And we feel happy with ourselves that we got so much more done throughout the day rather than just thinking about one single thing. And your self-esteem goes up too. You trust yourself and you're more confident in yourself when you're able to forgive. So now, on the flip side, how do you feel if you can't forgive someone? If the thought just keeps reoccurring in your mind of the situation that happened, how do you feel? Exhausted, yes. Mentally, I think physically sometimes too. And sorry, what did you say? Frustrated, yes. confused. Yeah, you feel bewildered. Your mind's going 1,000 places. You don't know which path to pick. I think those are two great feelings that we have. Also stressed. I feel that's a big part. We keep thinking, what if they didn't do that? What if they didn't do this? Right? We keep playing the situation in our mind 1,000 times, and I feel that we just keep dwelling in the past. We're living in the past instead of living right now in the present and changing our future. We also have hatred sometimes. Now, this is on the far end, but sometimes we do end up hating the person if they did something to us that was pretty awful and bad. We also resent the person. We are hurt. Sometimes we feel sad. Sometimes we feel mad. And these are normal to feel. But if you ask yourself, the stress, hate, sadness, what does it all relate to? I think it all relates to health problems, right? Stress is such a big cause of health problems nowadays too. And not just emotional, but physical and mental. People get physical diseases because of stress and not being able to overcome a situation. They stress out in the mental, in that they can't move on. They're stressing in their own head and they're not getting anywhere. Or emotional, where we're taking it out on others, or we get to that extent. Or it could even be our physical, where our body can no longer have the capacity to deal with these things, and we just feel so lost, and sometimes we even get autoimmune diseases because of the stress. So it can even affect relationships, these things that we hold so dearly to us, and it can honestly stop us from experiencing the freedom that forgiveness can truly enable. So ask yourself, what do you want to feel at the end of the day, right? Do you want to feel peace, light, or do you want to feel hatred, stressed out? I think that we all would agree, and I personally would agree, that we want to feel light and happy with their life and peaceful. So we're going to indulge a bit and dig a little bit more deep with forgiveness. So I want you to ask this question to yourself. What does forgiveness mean to you? Well, by the book, forgiveness means to let go of these past grudges, and be able to move on and not hold any lingering anger towards someone. Now, the easiest example I can give of forgiveness, in which you can apply it and see how it works in practical life, is someone does something, you're mad at them, they apologize, and you truly forgive them, and you are no longer mad at them. That's an example of forgiveness. So I believe that forgiveness can actually be seen as a healing virtue. Healing in the sense that it could be a wound. Now, it doesn't have to be a physical wound. It could be a wound in the heart. And forgiveness can patch that wound and help it, since it has the capacity to free an individual from being consumed by anger. So often we can't forgive those people around us because we are so angry at the person. And anger is something that destroys us sometimes. So I think we need to dig a little bit deeper into what is anger? Why does it come to us? Honestly, it's something that many of us don't even know that we possess. It's not something that we're born with, but something that comes out of nowhere sometimes. And we have a choice. We have a choice to be angry, or we have a choice to be peaceful. So, like everything, this is a choice. There are two types of anger. One of them is aggressive anger. Now, this is when we can yell at someone, speak in a really loud tone. We can put people down and lower their self-esteem. And we can also use physical, such as hitting. That's part of aggressive anger too. On the flip side, there is also passive anger. Now, passive anger is when a person internalizes the expression of anger when he or she avoids dealing with the situation that contributed to feelings of anger. I feel that anger can do bad to others and ourselves. And passive anger does bad to ourselves because it's held within and we just can't let it go, that this rage is just built in within us and we can't ignore it. And I feel that it can also hurt others in that aggressive anger, right? Where we express our anger like directly towards others. I think anger is something which takes away so much from us. It's like this cheating, stealing trait. It can take away our peace of mind. We do bad karma. And it can even take away these precious relationships. Think about how long it takes to build these relationships, build important relationships that mean something to us. And then in a blink of an eye, we can be angry at that person and it breaks the relationship forever. So this is why forgiveness allows us to check our tendency towards cruelty. Just like any situation, I think there's always two sides to a story. And in that sense, I think that there's two sides to a person forgiving and being rude. And we need to realize that even if you think you're the victim, that's not always the case, right? Because someone can do something to you, and after a certain point, it's just like you might be the person that needs forgiving too, because someone got mad at you. And instead of forgiving, in return, you got mad at them too. So at that point, it's like, should they really be forgiving you because of your cruelty and anger? Or you can act wrong towards them and then you two are the same person, right? If you can't take that first step and forgive, and then you both are the same person. And if you keep holding those grudges, you might be the person who is rude, no matter if the person is begging for you to be sorry. I think it's an injustice to both of the people then. So this is why forgiveness is a healing virtue, because it helps us constrain and deal with anger and patch those wounds. Now, this brings a story I had in mind, so you can sit back and just listen carefully while I read this and think about the moral and how this relates to forgiveness, because I will ask for your ideas later. So, this is a story of two brothers who lived side by side in their own farms for many years, until one day a foolish argument caused a rift between them. This was the first serious disagreement the brothers had in all their 50 years. Up until that day, they always worked their fields together, shared knowledge and produce, and lent a helping hand to one another in times of need. The fight began over a small misunderstanding, which can sometimes happen, but the dispute dragged on and became an angry exchange of words, followed by weeks of silence. One day, there was a knock on the older brother's door. When he opened it, he was facing an old, bearded carpenter, holding a toolbox. "I could sure use some work, sir," said the stranger. "Do you need any repairs on the farm?" "Yes," replied the brother. "I've got a job for you. Across the creek, there's a farm that happens to belong to my younger brother. Until recently, the whole area between our homes was green. But then he changed the creek's path, making it into a border between us. I'm sure he did that for spite, but I'll show him," said the older brother. "You see those trees by the barn? I want you to turn them into a 10-foot tall fence. I never want to see his face again." The old carpenter thought quietly to himself for a few minutes, and then drove off to see the city on some errand. When he came back in the evening, the old carpenter had finished. Upon arriving at the creek, the older brother was stunned. His eyes were bulging out, and he couldn't utter a single word. Where a fence should have been standing, a bridge stood now. A quaint and special bridge. Truly a work of art, with an intricately carved banister. At the same time, the younger brother happened to come to the same spot. He rushed over the bridge and embraced his older brother and said, "You're something special. Building a bridge after all I've said and done?" While both brothers were hugging, the old carpenter collected his tools and started walking away. The brothers turned to him and said, "Please stay for a few more days. We have more things that need fixing." "I would love to stay, kind sir," said the carpenter, "but I have many more bridges to build, and things to fix in other places. So, what do you think the moral of the story is? Now, I think the moral of the story is quite a simple one. I think we often let anger push away the ones that we love. And sometimes it can just be based on a small argument. Something so small turns out to be something so big because we just keep adding on and we bring up the past, and then it creates this huge rift between us, which is then later so hard to mend. And in this case, the brother wanted to build a fence because he could no longer stand the brother, and it was his anger that drove this bad side of him. And also, I think this story shows that pride sometimes comes before love. Now, the brothers could have had a choice, right, to confront one another and apologize for their mistakes. But instead, they just pushed each other away, and their ego came in the way that they didn't want one person to apologize first. And it came in between their love, this connection which they held so deeply. And we need to know that we can't let this happen to us nowadays and in today's age. We have to learn to forgive. We have to learn to move on. And we have to appreciate what we have right now. And you have to remember, the past cannot be changed. We can't alter it, no matter how hard we try. But we can change our future. And the way we can change our future is by changing how we live in the present right now. And we choose how we live in the present right now. And we need to know that no quarrel can spoil a true connection. We have to build our bridges when we can. So sometimes a creek, right? We'll take a creek, for example, and it splits the two lands, and we can't get across. We can't move forward with life sometimes. We want to get to the other side, the greener side. But we need to know that we have to build a bridge to do that sometimes. We have to take this leap of faith and build. And once we build, then we can cross them with a smile. Another important thing that I feel this story emphasizes is that sometimes we do need a third person to step in. Even though, yes, of course, it's better for two people to deal with it, sometimes it's okay to have a third person step in and help each other, help the two forgive each other. A beautiful example of this is a mother. Sometimes when their kids fight, a mother has to step in. And that's okay, because she'll tell the kids that they have to move past this and they have to give each other a hug. And they can't let this destroy them. So I hope this story sticks with you and it resonated with you, because it's an important way on how we can apply forgiveness in day-to-day life. So I think a major part of forgiveness is when we're in relationships. And relationships have their pros and their cons, just like anything else. Pros is we get love from them, we get happiness, we get confidence, and they support us. But like anything, it also has its cons, like attachment. And with attachment comes problems from expectations. So while problems will come, we have to learn to forgive. And forgiveness can open doors to the restoration of broken relationships, or thought to be broken relationships. And I think there's two important things for how the basis of relationships work. I believe the first way to avoid problems in a relationship, first of all, is to compromise. Now, this is a big thing. We can compromise, and an example to give this is you and your friend want to go on a trip. Someone wants to go to New York, someone wants to go to Arizona, and you can't come up with a solution. Either one person has to compromise, or you guys can meet in the middle and be like, hey, why don't we just meet in California for now, right? And how about we just both give in? So I think compromisation is a big way for how we can help strengthen relationships. Now, as I said, problems are unavoidable. It's just like it's raining so much and you're not wearing an umbrella or you're not with shelter and you can't avoid the rain. It's like that. It will come. You just have to choose how you want to deal with it. And Forgiveness helps, but problems happen, but you have to learn to forgive and help the other person understand where they went wrong and having meaningful conversation with them rather than ignoring them. Sometimes when you ignore people, it just leads to broken relationships and you may never see the person again. So you choose. It's your choice and decision that can change the future. Now, I'd like to take the example of a mother again to demonstrate this idea. How many times does a mother forgive her children? So many times, right? We make mistakes. We do, and it's a natural part, but they nurture us. They help us learn where we went wrong. They teach us right from wrong. And a mother is a beautiful example from that. We make mistakes, but that's okay. Instead of ignoring us forever and getting mad, it might be in the instant that they do get angry with us, but they will always forgive us and we will always feel happy. So, in a way, when we forgive, in this case a mother, when they love and forgive, then often the kids learn. So if the mother, say, did not forgive and instead she treated the children with anger and frustration and she avoided them all the time, then of course the kids would be in a bad environment. And they will not get the love they need, and they cannot be brought up in the best environment. They cannot truly be themselves. So I feel forgiveness is a very important because it can shape an individual's future. It can lead them to their path. And forgiveness is also bravery. It takes bravery to take the first step to forgive. But it also is confidence. The mother has to have confidence that the kids won't repeat it, and it's because she trusts them and she believes in them. You can only forgive when you believe someone and believe that they won't repeat the mistake, but rather make them understand where they went wrong and not ignoring them. You have to accept the situation and just know that those who hurt you, even if sometimes you don't get an apology from them, you still need to forgive and accept a person, or else you are losing your peace of mind. And we have talked about how if you lose your peace of mind, you're being stressed and it's affecting your health. So we choose how we want to live. So now that we've talked a bit about relationships and how forgiveness is important and how we can implement it in relationships with an example, I have another question. Is it easier to forgive strangers or people who are close to you? And why? In other words, does it take longer to forget about something that a stranger did? Or does it take longer to forget something that a close person has done to you? I can give you a couple seconds to think about it and use the chat box, of course, if you can. Yes, exactly. Often it's harder to forgive someone who is closer to us. And the reason for this is attachment. And how we've talked that with every relationship, there is cons, and that's attachment, because we have these expectations from others. For example, you expected your friend to come to your graduation. You envisioned her there. You envisioned while you were walking across the stage, she would be there cheering for you, clapping for you, being the loudest in the room. You had this expectation of her from the start, but she didn't end up coming. It hurts you so much, and who knows how long it'll take you to forgive her, because every time you see her now, maybe you'll just think of that incident, and you can't trust the person again. You keep pondering, and your mind will hold that grudge for the longest time. Now, on the flip side, a stranger accidentally gets their purse caught in your hair, and it pulls a little bit of your hair out. Yes, in the instant, you might be furious, but later on you're fine and you forget about it shortly. Although you might want to get mad, you won't, because sometimes we want to create this image of ourselves in society and we don't want people to think of us as this obnoxious person. So sometimes we just forget about it. And that's often what we do, and we don't make a scene. Now, we can take this example too. You bump into a stranger. What do? You You apologize. That's your first instinct. However, you bump into a family member, let's say your sibling. You blame them, right? I think that's some good food for thought to think how you interact with these different people in life. So, now we're going to talk about a little bit about forgiveness and whether it's easy or hard. So another question for you, because of course it's good to apply and constantly ask yourself things instead of just listening. When you were put in a position that you had to forgive someone, was it something that was easy or was it something that was difficult? Often it's something that's hard because it's viewed in society as the inferior move, not the superior, the inferior. The first reason is you're seen as weak. People think that because you're weak, they can keep doing it over and over again, and you don't want to be seen as the weak and vulnerable person in society. So that's why sometimes it's hard for us to forgive. Second reason is because we're scared that they'll keep repeating the mistake. We let them loose one time, they'll just keep doing the same things to us. So this trust gets broken, and that's an important thing I think we need to realize. That's why we are so scared. But to work on this weak and vulnerable, we can learn to just confide with the person and make them understand. And instead of making them repeat the mistake, we can trust the person. So we have to change your viewpoint and become optimistic, but not look at these inferior, weak, vulnerable, but instead of this trust and this understanding and empathy that we can show the person. And we don't realize that, again, it loses our peace of mind, something that is so important to us. And that forgiveness makes us love more. And once we love ourselves, we can love others. Forgiveness is not for the weak. It's for the strong. Now, take this example. When two people are mad at each other and both of the people are fighting, they often resort to the other person to forgive them. They usually don't want to be the first person to forgive. They feel like they're going to lose if they say sorry for what they did. And we have this expectation for the other person to say sorry. And it's because sometimes we have a bit bigger ego and we don't want to let our ego get hurt. So neither side apologizes, and the mutual resentment does continue. It continues indefinitely until one of us chooses to put a stop on it and chooses to forgive. It's important to remember that you do not lose by apologizing and admitting that you have been hurting the other person. You win, and so does the other person. We can't let forgiveness be this one-sided thing where one person keeps forgiving or either neither side keeps forgiving. We need to both make the effort and take the first step. We have to be proactive and take the initiative. And only then can it be a win-win situation. Ask yourself, do you want to be that person to build the bridge and cross it? Do you want to take that first step like this story? So, there are two types of forgiveness. There's forgiveness for the self and forgiveness for others. And I think both are quite important. When we hear forgiveness, we usually think about forgiving others, though. That's the first thought. It's usually with two people. And while forgiveness for others is definitely a big part and important, this is more external forgiveness. But we don't realize that there is internal forgiveness as well. There should be forgiveness for when we do something wrong. If we put an alarm in the morning and we don't get up, yes, it's on us. But we can't hate ourselves forever. Instead, we have to love ourselves, forgive ourselves, and tell us that no, tomorrow I can wake up. Tomorrow I can try again. It's a new day. Even if you don't do that well on a test, you have to forgive yourself. You have to understand and work and learn from it and be like, next time I will study harder instead of being so hard on yourself, because it just puts your self-esteem and self-confidence down. Sometimes we have to forgive ourselves for any wrong that we have done. So if we do something, if we choose the wrong path, when we were given two paths, we have to realize that we can't keep thinking about it. We have to let it go, and we have to own up to it. We have to own up to our mistakes. and just realize that we can move forward and we can change the outcome. It doesn't stop here. We can keep moving. And I think learning is the most important part about forgiving. We learn so much, and I think that's an important lesson to learn. That we shouldn't take forgiveness as a downfall, but it's something that we should look up to. We should forgive and we should look up to it. We learn so much when we forgive. It's like our eyes finally have opened. It's like we couldn't see, but then you put a pair of glasses on sometimes and things really come into perspective and we truly see it. And we can't let a little wave knock us. We can't let the little wave shake us. We have to keep steady and keep our stance and our position and just keep going in this vast ocean. You have all the power in you to forgive. Don't wait. You're ready. Build your own bridge and pass it. Another question. Why does it take us a while to forgive others? I'll give you a second. We're angry. Yes, that's a huge one. The malice in our hearts. Sometimes we say we forgive someone, but then again, we don't truly mean it from our bottom, from our roots, from our core. Exactly, that's the biggest thing, expectations, right? If we're content with ourselves and we're content with others, these problems won't arise in the first place and will just be so much easier to forgive someone. So yes, we talked about the malice in our hearts, the angriness, but sometimes it's that we are hurt and we just can't move on because we fear that it will repeat. But that's where trust comes in. We must trust others. And that's only when we can forgive. So I feel that trust and forgiveness are so intertwined. They're so parallel to each other and they go hand in hand. Where you have one, you have the other because you trust a person and you forgive them and you trust that they won't repeat the same mistakes. Now, to give an example of trust and forgiveness, I'd like to talk about the recent Disney movie that came out, Raya and the Last Dragon. I recently watched this movie and it really resonated with me, and especially that I was doing this topic on forgiveness. Straight away, I wanted to incorporate it into this session because I think it has a beautiful message behind it. So the story is basically about 5 different kingdoms that were once together, but they got separated because this one kingdom, which was called Heart, owned the dragon gem. And everyone else was jealous of them because they wanted it, because they felt that then they would be superior. And in order to unite the kingdoms again, Raya's father, who guards the gem, and he's a president basically of the kingdom, or what you call it, but he invites all the kingdoms to come and tries to unite them. And so Raya meets, her name is Namari, and she is a daughter of the Fang leader, and Fang is the other kingdom. And she trusts her, and they talk that evening, and she gets really close to her, and they both relate on so many things about the dragon and the dragon gem that Raya finally takes the chance, and she shows Namari the dragon gem that's hidden and that's protected. And she trusts her, and she takes that step, but Namari betrays her, and she steals the dragon gem. And once everyone sees that Namari stole the dragon gem because her mother told her to, everyone fights for it, and they're all grabbing it all at once, and it breaks. It shatters into 5 pieces. And why the dragon gem was so important, because it kept the evil spirits from coming. And once the globe broke, these evil spirits came, and whenever someone was with an evil spirit, they turned them into stone. So Raya's father was one of the victims, and he got turned into stone. And Raya was so upset, so mad, so angry, all these resentment towards Namari because she trusted her, and it was her fault that she trusted her and that this whole situation happened. So basically for 7 years, she travels, she tries to find the dragon so that the last dragon can put the globe back. But of course, as we know it, life has so many problems, ups and downs, so it doesn't happen towards the end. But basically in the last scene is when everything is going downhill. They're left out of hope, but they gather all the pieces together. And each person, there are 5 people, and each one of them is carrying a stone. Parts of the stone, the broken globe. And Raya finally realizes that it was all there in front of her the whole time. She didn't need no dragon. She didn't need a dragon to put the pieces back, but she needed trust. So Namari had one of the pieces, and she told everyone to give Namari the trust and give the pieces to her. And she forgave her. She truly forgave her. And she trusted her. And everyone else did too, because Raya trusted her. And when Namari held the 5 pieces together and everyone believed in her and forgave her, that's when the globe was put back and the spirits went, and everyone that was turned into stone turned back to human. So I think it's a beautiful demonstration to show that we have to take that first step, that leap of faith. Even though no matter what someone has done to us, we have to trust them and we have to move on. And just how the globe shatters, sometimes their heart shatters, and we can't forgive someone, but we can always mend it by trusting them and making them understand. And sometimes we can't forgive others, even if it's not trust issues. It can be because we want sympathy and self-pity. And often, sometimes people go to max efforts to show how sorry they truly are. They can give us gifts, flowers, attention, and sometimes we like that because of the attention. But we don't realize that this is not a reason why we should not forgive someone because we want the attention. It's a cruel way, it's a greedy way. But it's only when we are content then we won't expect, and therefore we can forgive so much easier. Just remember that forgiveness is the best form of love. And while it definitely takes a strong person to say sorry, it takes a stronger person to forgive. Now I'm going to change topics a little bit onto apologizing. So not always do people apologize, but I believe that when people do apologize and they truly apologize, then it's so much easier for a person to forgive someone. And I think we do need to touch a bit on apologizing and how to apologize. We should apologize with humility and humbleness. We should not have an ego, but we should be sorry and take the first step. We should not have no expectations back. We should do our part. We should say sorry, and we should not ask for anything back. So I think the first way that we can apologize is by saying sorry. And not saying, I'm sorry, but. Sometimes we say, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have done what you did. Or, I'm sorry, but you were the one that actually started it. We should just plainly say, I'm sorry. And mean it from the heart. The second thing that we can do is we can own up to our mistakes. We can be the responsible ones and show others that, yes, it was my fault. We have to take accountability sometimes. Even though it sometimes looks that we don't feel good that we did, but we have to realize what we did is what we did, and we have to own up to our mistakes. Third thing is you should describe what happened when you're apologizing. And you shouldn't describe what they did wrong, but you should describe what you did wrong and describe how you should have actually handled the situation. Fourth thing is admit that you're wrong. And it's okay to admit that you're wrong. And the last thing is you should ask for forgiveness, but never beg, right? Because then your self-esteem is going down. We can't expect from others, but we can do our part. So now that we talked about apologizing, how should you accept an apology, right? Sometimes people say sorry, but sometimes we can't forgive them because their ego gets in the way too. We're like, no, we're better than them. They shouldn't have done that to us. I can't forgive them. But that's not how we should take it. We should also take it with humility and love and make them understand. So on the topic of forgiveness again, I think there are 7 steps I've utilized to live a life of true forgiveness. And I think you can implement them into your life too, to gain a better knowledge. The first step that we can take is to identify our hurt. We need to start by pinpointing where this hurt is and the source of our hurt. Was it a failure? Something that is internal, right? Was it a missed opportunity? Something you didn't take? Was it a heartbreak? A person who was mean to you? Or someone who neglected you? You need to get to the root of your pain. I often like to take the analogy of an iceberg with this when we're identifying our hurt. Sometimes we just look at the surface, like an iceberg, right? Most of the iceberg is hidden underwater and we can't see it, but only the tip is peeking out of the water. And sometimes we don't realize that we have to dig deeper into what's hurting us. Sometimes we only see the surface, but there might be something much deeper that's bothering us. So the first step is to identify your hurt. The second step is to acknowledge your hurtful emotions. What are you feeling? What are you feeling right now in this instant? Is it sadness, grief, anger, pity, loneliness? Or is it something deeper, like hate, disgust, jealousy, depression? The hurt may strike more than one chord of your heartstrings. But in order to get rid of the hurt, you need to recognize your feelings towards it. I think it's important that we have to sit in silence and self-reflect for the second point when we acknowledge our hurt. I think it's a great thing to sit in silence once before you're going to bed especially, and whatever happened throughout your day, if someone did something to you, you need to think about it and let it go right there and right then, and forgive the person, or else you'll just carry it on to the next day. And the next day when you wake up in the morning, you're just down. So you need to sit in silence and reflect right there and then. The third step is to forgive yourself and let go. Forgiveness starts from within. And only when you can forgive yourself can you forgive others. Just like the change starts with you, right? You were not the reason that someone hurt you. It's not your fault. Sometimes we think that we could have changed the situation and we blame ourselves. But that's not always the case. You need to forgive yourself first before you have the capacity to forgive others. It gives us the capacity and the strength to do that and the willpower. Only then are you able to let go of the negative emotions associated with the hurt that caused by someone else. Now, the fourth step is to breathe in compassion. You can just sit there and breathe all the love, all the positivity, and while you're exhaling, breathe out all the negativity, all the stress. One breath at a time. First with yourself, then for the person who hurt you. You need to empathize with that person's motivations, why they did what they did, and put yourself in their shoes again. Their emotions, and the circumstances. Sometimes people don't do it for their own selfish causes, but sometimes they just do it because they're hopeless sometimes. For example, a homeless man steals food, right? It's just like, should we get angry at them? What they're doing is wrong, but it's feeding them and it's making them live. So sometimes it's also morality and the question of right and wrong. You need to challenge yourself to put yourself in that person's shoes and view the situation from their perspective. Look at it from their lens, not always your lens. The fifth step is to forgive unconditionally. Compassion and empathy materialize into action when you forget about the problem and move on to the solution of forgiveness. Give your forgiveness to that person with no strings attached. Forgive unconditionally. Don't have a limit on it. Just keep forgiving. But of course, don't be gullible too. But you should always make the person understand with your forgiveness. The sixth step is to be grateful. And I think that often it's this expectation that we have, that we didn't expect that person to hurt us, and that's why we're not content. But we need to be content, and we can be content if we're grateful and we have affirmations or even blessings throughout the day. If we count our affirmations throughout the day, we can see how much we truly have, and we don't have to dwell on this one thing that went wrong or sideways, right? So forgiveness is one of the most powerful ways to empower personal growth. Both for the forgiver and the forgiven, both learn. I think problems come in our life to teach us. It's a way of life. When you let go of the burden of the hurt and all of the negative energy of the emotions associated with the hurt, you are given the peace and freedom to live a better version of yourself. You're also empowered to transfer that positive energy to the other person and people around you so that they can become better versions of themselves. Count your blessings. See how much more the world has to offer instead of being hung up on this one little thing. And lastly, the last step that can help you forgive is to love again. Forgiveness lets you love again. Once you forgive, your heart is full of love. You are stronger because you love yourself and love others, no matter the magnitude of their shortcomings. You forgive because you love, and you love because you forgive. So I have a little quote that I'd like to share. Forgiveness is not always easy. At times, it feels more painful than the wound we suffered to forgive, the one that had inflicted it. And yet, there is no peace without forgiveness. When forgiveness is necessary, don't wait too long. We must begin to forgive. Because without forgiving, we choke off our own joy. We kill our own soul. People carrying hate and resentment can invest themselves so deeply in resentment and hatred that they gradually define themselves in terms of it. So I'd like you to sit with yourself and just reflect on everything we talked about. What forgiveness is, what it's not, how to implement it, different types of forgiveness, all these things we covered today. And you need to realize that you have to give the peacefulness that you deserve. This life is beautiful. We just have to open our eyes and really look. So thank you. I really hope that you took at least one point away with you. And please feel free to ask any questions in the chat box. If there are no questions, if you guys are interested to learn more about the Brahma Kumaris, please feel free to check out our website. And there is also Raj Yoga courses, which is the core, our foundation. And also our whole series is on YouTube for self-care, improving the quality of everyday life. And they're all amazing. So I do recommend that you give those a watch too. Thank you for being here today. I hope you continue to stay safe, and we'll see you again.